I guess. All right, well, good evening. How are y'all doing, church? Good to see everybody tonight. It's getting darker a little earlier. It's not as bright as it usually is. I think it might be a little bit cloudy though, but the sun and the days are getting a little bit shorter. Time changes next week, that's right. Well, let's bow our heads to get started and we'll get going. Our Father in heaven, we thank you once again for this time together around your word. And we ask you, Lord, to speak to our hearts tonight. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, let's go to Proverbs chapter 27, and we're going to start a new little section tonight about friends and friendships. It's a very important thing in your life to know what a true friend is, and there's obvious applications for this, obvious lesson. We can, on the surface, right, the obvious thing is, how can you be a friend? How can you be a true friend? Friends, not necessarily a life pursuit of that. That is all you focus on. But friends and friendships come along with godly character. True friends. You can gather a following, you can gather a group, but just because you gather a group or a following of people that you run with, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're with true friends. And so the Bible defines what a true friend is, not the world. Do you understand what I'm saying? You can get a band of thieves that get together and decide they're going to rob a bank. And those people are a group, they are a following, they're running together. But I promise you, they're not together for the true motive of being each other's friends. So just a group of itself is not necessarily the picture of a friend or a friendship group. The Bible defines what a true friend is. Well, here we go. Great lessons here. This unit is going to span from 27 verse 1 all the way to verse 22. Verse 22 is what they call a transitional verse. It looks backwards and it also looks forward. The next little section beginning at verse 23 is about flocks and herds. And I promise you, just because you're not a sheep herder or a goat herder, there's a great application there for flocks and herds, and we'll get to that in a couple of weeks, probably about 3 weeks. But interesting about 1 through 22 is there's 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet. That's kind of interesting. But the actual section on friends and friendships begins at verse 1 and it ends in verse 21. And here's the really cool thing about this, besides the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet, is that the first word in the Hebrew is praise, and the last word in Hebrew is praise. And so that's how we round off, or we say that this is a section, because it forms an inclusio around the word praise. Praise is not the main idea. Friends and friendships and relationships are mentioned more often than anything in this section, and it neatly divides into two 10-verse parts, 1 through 10, and then 11 through 21. So we're going to try to cover the first 10 verses tonight, which is part 1 of friends and friendships, and then next week we'll look at part 2, which is 10 more verses. One more thing about the structure of the text that I'll tell you about is that they are given in what's called quatrains, which is 4 lines. And these 4, like for example, verse 1 and 2 in the Hebrew is 4 lines. There's and all these verses are almost identical in that verse 1 has a part 1 and a part 2. Verse 2 has a part 1 and a part 2, composing 4 parts, 4 lines. And so verses 1 and 2 to go together. Verses 3 and 4 go together. Verses 5 and 6 go together. Verses 7 and 8 go together. And verses 9 and 10 go together. And so it's 5 quatrains. 5 quatrains. So in our English translation, it's verse 1, verse 2. But if we were going to forget about verses, which is an English thing, it wasn't in the Hebrew text like that. It was written in lines, not verses. You would just put 1 and 2 together. It's one thought. It's so. And here's the first thought. I'm going to go ahead and get into it. It's the need of appropriate praise in friendship. The need of appropriate praise. Also, what you'll see here is there is the boasting. Let's look at it. Do not boast. And so I told you the first word is praise in the Hebrew. Do not praise self. Okay? That's what it means. Do not praise self. That's what the Hebrew means. Do not boast. Boasting is another way of saying self-praise or praising oneself. Do not praise yourself about tomorrow, for you do not know what a day may bring forth. Well, let's look at the second part of this. Let another man praise you. You see how that goes together with verse 1? Do not self-praise. Let another man praise you. Let someone else do it. And he goes on to explain it even further and just torques it down even tighter. He says, and not your own mouth. Okay, I got it. Let someone else do it, not me. And that's what verse 1 said too, right? Do not self-praise. There's a reason given in verse 1, and we'll come back to that in just a minute. It's because you're not sovereign. You don't have control over your destiny. You don't have control over tomorrow. You have no control, and you don't even, not only do you not have control, you have no knowledge of it. You have no knowledge about what is going to happen tomorrow. We'll come back to that in just a minute. But what he says here is this. He goes on and says, a stranger, as opposed to a family member. Who is going to brag about you more than anybody? I'm just going to give you the answer of what's on my mind. Mama. Mama going to brag about you more than anybody. Mama going to put you up on a pedestal, and she's going to pull out the pictures. The pictures just unfold, right? And she's going to brag about her little baby, and that her baby done no wrong, and he's this and she's this, and oh, it's great. Well, there's a little bit of, and bless her heart, right? There's a little bit of bias there. You know, Mama loves you more than anybody else. You know, you might have a head like a 10-cent watermelon, but Mama going to love you anyway and think you're the most beautiful creature that ever walked on the earth. When in fact you may not be, okay? I'm just telling you the truth. But a stranger who has no stake in bragging about you, in loving you, has no bias. They are objective. You know what I mean by that? They're objective. They're not biased. They don't have any preference for you. It's an outsider. Someone who's not your blood relative. And not your own lips. So you're reminded, don't do it for yourself. And when someone celebrates you or promotes you, that is the appropriate kind of praise. Why would that ever happen? Why would a stranger ever boast about you? Someone that is objective, someone that's promoting you, and they ain't your mama. What would be the reason for that? You probably did something good. You probably did something noteworthy. Truly noteworthy, right? Not something that was, there's no other motive other than you probably did something good. So there's a reminder here about a true friend will praise other people. He or she will praise you, and someone who maybe pretends to run with you and be your friend won't be one who's trying to promote themselves. Because someone who is promoting themselves may have an ulterior motive for being your friend. Because that's the kind of person they are. They are someone who is trying to get ahead and promote themselves. So if they're concerned about self-promotion, then they might be, sorry, here comes Dad again talking to the son. Son, don't be gullible. They might be using you. Because that person is a user. Someone who promotes themselves is selfish, and they're just trying to get ahead. And the only reason they hang out with you is because you make them look good. Okay? So that's your first little lesson on friends and friendships. So there's a need for appropriate praise. Boasting is repulsive. So a couple of two words that are key here. One who promotes himself is inflated and full of pride. And God hates pride. God hates pride. A proud heart. One who promotes himself. But here is what God exalts. God hates pride, and God exalts humility. Humility. And so you see both of those ideas there. Do not boast about tomorrow. Now let's talk about tomorrow. This person who is boasting about what they're going to do tomorrow. Let me ask you a question, and I know you'll get it. On December 6th, 1941 was the day before Pearl Harbor. And no one had a clue what was going to happen the next day. Many, many people lost their lives on December 7th, 1941. But there was people on December 6th that said, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. Did they? No, they did not. September 10th, 2001. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to sign this deal. We're going to be millionaires tomorrow. Just wait. That person on their way up the elevator to sign that contract to become a millionaire did not make it. You do not know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Don't be boasting about tomorrow. Don't self-praise about tomorrow, what you're going to do and how this is going to happen. You have no idea. Only God knows what's going to happen tomorrow. And so let another man praise you, not your own mouth. Number 2, verse 3 and 4, really it boils down to that the fool is how he is described, okay? It's the impossibility of a fool being a true friend. So everything you've learned about a fool in the book of Proverbs, he or she is not your friend. In fact, they can't be your friend. It's impossible for them to exhibit the true godly characteristics of what a friend should be. They cannot do it. It's impossible. They're unable to do it. They're unable to deliver as a friend. Well, look at the verse, the words here of these verses. A stone is heavy and sand is weighty. Unbearable, right? That's the picture. An unbearable weight. Put a stone on, and you just imagine being crushed and just overwhelmed by the weight of this stone. Or have you ever tried to lift a bag of sand? Man, that is heavy. A big bag of feed, horse feed. Just, oh boy, how far do you want to carry it, right? Not very far. It's unbearable. But a fool's wrath is heavier than both of them. So a fool, as we know, has problem with temperament. They have a problem with controlling their wrath. They're just an explosive hothead. just, poof, just erupts in wrath. That's a fool. Well, it gets even better, more descriptive in verse 4. Wrath, so it builds, you see how this builds? Unbearable weight. Then you have the explosion of a fool's wrath, and it is heavier than the most unbearable weight that you could imagine. Just cannot take it. Unbearable because it will fracture and destroy a relationship. You cannot be their friend. They are unable to be your friend. They cannot be your friend. Because they are out of control. They are explosive. They are a hothead. They're not going to be able to love you like you need to be loved in a true friendship. You know, that's what a friend is. It's really a true love between people. And not the perverted kind of love that our society has made relationships out to be so gross. It is okay for two males to have a pure kind of friendship love for each other. I can think of an example in the Bible would be Jonathan and David, Saul's son Jonathan. Just pure friendship. They had a pure friendship for one another. Our world is so sick and perverted that, you know, I even think that we're afraid to open up ourselves and open up our hearts to each other because we're afraid I don't know what we're afraid of. People are just nasty nowadays. But this is how it builds. Wrath, which is unbearable and destroys relationships, is cruel, and anger a torrent. A torrent means overwhelming flood. It's an overwhelming flood. But then he moves on from that, and you see that, well, we've talked about wrath, we've talked about anger, we've talked about, now we talk about a third thing, jealousy. Jealousy. And he says that jealousy is the worst of the three. The first two are unbearable. Jealousy is the worst than all of them. So let's talk about jealousy. What is jealousy? Yeah, it is an overwhelming emotion. It's, I want what you have. That's the worst kind of friend ever. Did you know that people will pretend? Here we go again with Dad talking to gullible son, right? Son, be careful. There's going to be some people that's going to pretend to be your friend, but they're really jealous of you. And at the right time, they will strike, and they will try to take what you have. Jealousy. They have an intense interest for either your success or your property. A lot of times jealousy is used, it's used in a positive and a negative sense in the Bible. Sometimes it says that God is a jealous God because He wants your full devotion. Your head is turned away from Him, and He is jealous for you to turn your head towards Him. It's also used oftentimes in the context of husband and wife. Husband and wife. And so it implies both of those have to do with devotion. So, there you go. Not your friend. Not your friend. The first two are not your friend. The self-promoter and the wrathful and the angry. Anger is another one. We didn't talk about it much. And the jealous, not your friend. Not your friend. It is impossible for them to be your friend. So, watch out for people like that. 5 and 6. How do you respond to a friend? How do you respond to the wrongdoing of a friend, may we say? In verse 5, open rebuke is better than love carefully concealed. Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. Well, there's a lot here. What it's saying in verse 5, it is better to tell your friend the painful truth, which has a lot to do with verse 6. Faithful are the wounds of a friend. Sometimes what a friend tells you will hurt. It may hurt. But, and you'll know this when it comes. You'll know there's some people that hurt you and they're not your friend. Okay, so don't think that everything that hurts and everyone who says they're your friend, it's meant for your good, because it's not always true. Okay? Don't be naive. Don't be gullible. Be objective about it. Be discretionary about it, right? Analyze it carefully. But look at the last part of verse 5. This is where it really gets good. Love carefully concealed is inferior. You see that? It's inferior to open rebuke. Because a concealed love doesn't tell you the truth. Well, that's not good. It's not good for someone to sugarcoat things and hide things from you and to keep you from knowing something that would better you. Keep you from knowing something that would benefit you. I want to know, a friend will come along and tell me maybe something that I wasn't aware of, and it might hurt me a little bit, but I can see that what they're telling me is for my good. They really have my best interest in mind when they tell me these things. And that's how you'll know that, is this an enemy or is this coming from a friend? Well, look at the second part. The kisses of an enemy are deceitful. Oh boy, not your friend. Not your friend. Everyone who shows you love. Oh, you're so great. Oh, let me shake your hand. Oh, let me hug your neck. Oh, you're so great. Oh. Could be deceit. It could be a cover for how they feel. Believe it or not, it's still true. There are fake people out there. And not everyone who pretends to have your best interest actually does have your best interest. They are what they call disingenuine, right? They are disingenuous. They're not real. Boy, I tell you, I've met some real people, and when you meet a real friend, you never forget, do you? You never forget them. It just does something for your heart. Well, we could say more there, but look at this in 7 and 8. Boy, I tell you what, it's going to get. This is a mess right here. This is really a picture of a failed marriage. Verse 7 and 8. It has a lot to do with appetites, especially a sick appetite. A sick appetite, and then in verse 8, you have one fleeing his home, a broken home. He can't stay there anymore. So, it's kind of like, where's the cause? And I don't know where the cause is, except look at verse 7. A satisfied soul. Well, you think that sounds positive at first, but it turns sour right here. Loathes the honeycomb. Okay? The honeycomb is a positive thing, but someone is satisfied by not liking a good thing. They're satisfied with, but they don't like a good thing. Now look at this. But to a hungry soul, every bitter thing is sweet. And so in verse 7, you have a satisfied appetite, right? They're satisfied. Is that not true? A satisfied soul. They have a satisfied appetite, but he despises good food. Now, I want you to think about it in your marriage. Your husband or your wife is good food. Okay? Right? They're your wife. They're your husband. Okay? If you're married, that's what's good for you. No one else is good for you. You understand? You're not allowed. Okay, let me. Y'all are not allowed to cheat on your spouse. Okay, that would be bad food. Good food is you staying with your spouse. That's a good thing. But a satisfied soul loathes the good food. But look at this. A hungry soul, every bitter thing is sweet. This is someone who is famished, is hungry, but they crave bad food. They're craving something that is not good. Every bitter thing is sweet. Ooh, I want that bitter thing. Ooh, I want that bitter thing. But guess what? They're hungry. And they see something bitter, they see something bad, but to them, it is good. Okay? So it boils down to one is despising the good things and craving the bad things. Ooh, every bitter thing is sweet. Ooh, I want that. I'm craving it. Well, here's the result. What's being taught here in verse 8 is that it doesn't come out and say it, but the point of it is you need to have an appetite of a stable home. You know how you have a stable home? Well, I'll get to it in just a minute. Like a bird that wanders from its nest is a man who wanders from his place. Okay? Crisis. Crisis has driven this person to leave the nest. A bird, by nature, will not leave the nest unless it absolutely has to. It's an emergency. The tree is on fire. A bobcat climbs up into the tree. There's a crisis. There's something extraordinary that happens, and it causes the bird to leave its nest. It won't do it unless it has to, but it will. It will. So think about your spouse for just a minute. Your spouse might leave its nest if there is a crisis. Something that drives it away, something emergency. It has to leave. Like, for example, let me just be blunt. You cheat on them. It will drive them away from the nest. If you are unfaithful. So here we have the husband and wife are supposed to be the closest friends possible. Am I right or wrong? That is the if there's any two people in the world that should be the best friends of all, it would be the husband and the wife. But here you have a broken home. You have one leaving the nest because for whatever reason, it's not defined. It doesn't matter. But before that, you had these sick appetites. You see that? A sick appetite. One who it could be that you quit craving your wife and you have a sick and twisted appetite for something else. It might be another person, but it might be something else. It doesn't have to be another person, does it? It can be an alternate or an alternative to your husband or wife. Something you crave. You messing up. You're messing up when you don't crave your husband or your wife. That's a sick appetite. And then you want bad things. You crave bad things in life. That's just not the way it was intended. So, husband and wife should be the two best friends ever, right? But it collapses. It collapses because of a sick appetite. Watch what your cravings are. Because your cravings, your desires, will play probably the number one factor in whether your relationship, your husband, your house, your home stays together. Okay? All right. Verse 9 and 10, last one. Sick appetites. 9 and 10, the counsel of a friend. Ointment and perfume delight the heart. Yeah, that's true, isn't it? Yeah, those are good things. Ointment, it's like medicine. Put medicine. Oh, thank you for the medicine. I'm so thankful for it. It delights my heart to have medicine, right? You got a sinus headache? Oh, I need some medicine. Oh, thank you. Whew. Feel so much better, right? A heating pad on my back. Relief. Perfume. The aroma of my wife's perfume. I love it. Love it. Or my husband's cologne. It's a delight, isn't it? Delights the heart. And, laid side by side, a comparison, isn't it? The sweetness of a man's friend gives delight by what kind of counsel? Y'all finish the sentence. Hearty. That's right. Hearty counsel. Good, wholesome, just dependable and sound counsel. Something that is just, you know what? I hear you and I hear your advice, and I can tell when I heard it, it's ringing in my ear, and it encourages and delights my heart, because that was just what I needed. Just hearty, good, wholesome counsel. Thank you for, that's what a friend does. So that's your friend, okay? Self-promoter, not your friend. Jealous, wrath, and anger, not your friend, right? Someone with a sick appetite, friendships collapse, right? Did I skip one? The wrongdoing of a friend, verse 5 and 6. Someone who will tell you the painful truth, that's your friend. Someone who's deceitful and, I love you, I love you, I love you. Not your friend necessarily. You better be careful. Watch out for that one. I want to tell you something. When someone is over the top and it's too good to be true, it probably is. I mean, they just can't quit. I love you. Stop it. Just quit and be real, you know? Just be real. And stop all this fluff and this silliness. Do you hear that, Velma? The sound of the alarm. Time is expired. But let's finish it up. We got one more verse. We finished right on time, Velma, didn't we? Here we are. I love this one. So that's the benefit of wholesome counsel. Here's the help of a friend. Boy, it's good to have help, isn't it? That's a friend. A friend will come and help you in a time of need. And so he gets here and he says, do not forsake your own friend or your father's friend. I've read that there's a term in, I'm not trying to get too literary on you, but it's called exegetical. I almost couldn't say it. Which means it's not an or an and, it's a further description of. In other words, do not forsake your own friend, your father's friend. Same person. Not two different people, but same person. This person is your friend, and he was your dad's friend too. And so he is tried and tested over time. Your family has known this guy or this woman for 2 generations. He was a friend of my dad, and he's a friend of me. That's someone who's got a track record, proven track record, right, of 2 generations. And then it says, nor go to your brother's house. So don't discount and don't push away someone who's been your friend for a long time, been the friend to your family for a long time. Don't treat them lightly. Don't diminish their importance in your life. They're important to your life. And then he says, don't go to your brother's house in the day of your calamity. You're like, why? No, I'd go to my family. I'd go to my family in a time of disaster, in a time of emergency. I'll go to my family. Well, he goes on here and says this. Here's a lesson. Listen, he says, better is a neighbor nearby than a brother far away. So now we learn more about the location of these people and a lesson that a friend can be just as good to you or better than a family member. Especially when you look at all the information here about 2 generations, proven track record. He has shown himself to be a friend for a long time. And what can your brother who is far away do for you? Well, he's limited because he's not right there. But a good friend and a good neighbor close by is something to be treasured, is something to be valued. So there's a lot of little lessons there, but one thing off the top of my head is value your friends. Have value for your friends, because they can be just as powerful of a force and a positive impact in your life than some family members can be. Okay? All right, we'll stop right there. Went a little bit over, but not too bad. Prayer requests.